Tea with the Black Dragon by an author I'd never heard of before called R.A. MacAvery. Apparently they've published other books. I don't think I've ever encountered any of them. Look how charming that cover is. The story is also charming. It is quirky, unconventional, odd, and really quite unique. As such, when I read it, I felt that it wasn't easily boxed into any category. It's published by Ballantyne's Fantasy. I think in this day, I thought of it more as classic sci-fi fantasy fiction style, but I think in this day and age, you could probably call it straight magical realism. It's an old book. Look how much this book has suffered. It used to be a library book. Back when library books were loaned out on paper. It belonged to the Carpentaria Council. I found it many years ago after 92 when it was cancelled in a second-hand shop or possibly an op shop. I bought it, I read it, I liked it. I didn't originally adore it. I liked it, but I wasn't fascinated by it. I passed it on to my mother. My mother absolutely adored it. She loved it. She read it over and over. And because she loved it so much, I never got rid of it. I kept on reading it. On second reading, it's even better. It just is beautiful. It's a sort of book that when you think of it, you go, ah. But it won't be for everyone. It particularly won't be for people who want a thriller. And the description of this book makes it sound like it could be a thriller. Or people who are more plot focused. This is for people who are literature focused. If you want beautiful writing, you're going to get it. If you're going to get explosions and heavy thrillery James Bondy things, you probably won't. So let's start with the plot, kind of as it is. It starts with our main female character, Martha McNamara. She flies into town, some American town, maybe San Francisco, I'm not sure, at the invitation of her daughter. She and her daughter are estranged. She hasn't seen her daughter Liz for a very long time. And Liz herself is very unconventional. She's a musician, she's in her 50s, and can I just say, having characters that aren't young, actually real people in their with a real age on them, that's nice. Martha is not a conventional 50s. She's a musician. She plays fiddle in a band. She practices Zen. And she lives and thinks so outside the box that for a regular person, a good morning breakfast conversation with her could be hazardous. She is quirky. She is quirk incarnate. And a lot of this revolves around that quirk. So like I said, not for anyone. Like you often see in real life, if you've got a quirky parent, often the child who grew up in less than conventional circumstances will go full out into conventional life. And that's what's happened with Liz. She went to university in America, did computer science. She's now an IT wizard and she's making bags and bags of money. At 25 or something, she already owns a condo, but she is now in difficulty. In such difficulty that she's contacted her estranged mother, who I think was in New York, somewhere else in America, and has asked that she come so that she can talk to her. She sent her a plane ticket. Martha is close to broke, sent her a plane ticket and set her out to stay in a ritzy hotel. Now, on Martha's first day there, Liz isn't waiting for her at the ritzy hotel, and she meets an intriguing man, Maynard Long, who's Eurasian, of extensive conversational and full of unusual stories, and a little bit of mystery. I hope I'm still allowed to say Eurasian. It's sometimes hard to keep up with the politically correct terms, and I don't have a problem with someone of mixed race from an Asian country or background with someone of European background. Maybe there's a new thing I'm meant to say these days. Let me know if there is. In the meantime, I will point out that this book's from the 90s. Or is it the 80s? This old book calls it Eurasian, so I'm going to as well. Now, the next thing that happens in this book is that Liz vanishes and Martha's determined to find her, and Mr. Long volunteers to help. And that's the outline. So there's very little fantasy in that outline. It sounds like a straightforward kidnapping, computer, crime type novel. And if people pick it up expecting that, they may end up being quite disappointed. Because most of the time there's not a lot of fantasy. The uniqueness and the fantasy creep in subtly from the edges and sort of entwine around you. It's most appropriate in a story where a completely hidden dragon is the main character, and that's Maynard Long. So what you're going to like about this book, if you like it, is the gentle charm of the writing and the outlook, which is full of quirk, as I mentioned, and it grows on you because every time you read it, you like it better. I have seen quite a few people who didn't like it, and it's usually because they're expecting the thriller or the fantasy to be strong. The cover obviously has a dragon on the cover, and there is a dragon in the book, but it's a subtle dragon. It's not so much the European notion of dragons, which was more brute force. It's more like some of the Eurasian, again that word, fairy tales that I read as a kid, where the dragons were subtle and tricky. They were more like the Sphinx in Western literature, which was likely to ask you questions and likely to set you up for a fall. So it's more that type of dragon. But what you will love about this book, if you love it, is the writing. And I'm going to read a section that I always remember and always hark back to. So let me find. Yes, there we go. Having just crossed Turk Street, Maynard Long spied something on the sidewalk and bent to pick it up. It was a red rosebud, its petals disarranged, the stem half torn through, where a pin had pulled out. He grunted and smoothed it out as though it were wrinkled cloth. "The rose," he announced. "Loveliest and most formidable of flowers. Arms of York and Lancaster, in medieval times symbol of Jesus. Always it has meant beauty, love, peace." He presented the bud to Martha McNamara. It lay resting on his long fingers until she scooped it up. She sniffed it and held it up to the light. "Symbol? What's a symbol? This is a rose." She smiled and walked on. The moment rang for Maynard Long, rang as though the entire sky had become a gong, and Martha McNamara had struck it. He stood still while the grey stone city reeled about him. The 4 words echoed in his head. "This is a rose. The simple, dumb truth of them," announced the universe. That's why you're going to like it if you like it. This is literature. It's fantasy, and it's got subtleties of thrillery type plot, and it certainly has a dragon and has got fantastical, but basically it's the beauty of the literature that you will like if you like it. If you don't like reading literature for itself, I think maybe James Hadley Chase might work better for you in terms of a thriller, and there's certainly plenty of dragons that are more modern. This was a marvellous book. I hope some people will read it with equal enjoyment.